All right, welcome to a Cubase file for the City Gates soundtrack, which is one of the earliest levels in the game. Zave's here with me, and Zave's going to ask me some questions about the soundtrack and how it works.
Yeah. So first off, what kind of tools are you using for music composition?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm firstly using Cubase, which is a digital audio workstation, so a DAW, a DAW. And I use my MIDI controller, which you can see in front of me here, to input the MIDI notes. So what I mean by that is you can see in the bottom part of the screen here, I've got all these squares and things, and they trigger sound libraries. So they're the things that I use to create the music, put them all together, and come up with really cool sounds.
How do you use your MIDI keyboard when you're creating music?
Like this. It's actually the cat who creates all of the music. So I'll often play in the notes that I need. So I'll compose either on the spot, or I'll have something that I've composed in Sibelius or written down or something like that I can input with the keyboard. But for example, I can just, even just tinkle around on a piano instrument.
Would you be able to show us some cool libraries?
Absolutely. This is one that I really love, which is Tina Guo Cello, solo cello. So for example, I can literally just play this lovely cello on my keyboard. And it sounds like someone's right in the room here with us. And it's just the greatest thing ever invented, I think. It's super, super cool.
Do you get to play many live instruments when you compose? Or is it all kind of digital?
For this project, it's all digital. But there are some guitars that are in here, but I'm going to probably redo them myself with my guitars that I've got here. And quite a lot of my sort of effects pedals and things like that. Lots of years. I'll try and cut down on the years.
So could you show us some work from Moon Corp and how that kind of blends into the game design, what you've thought about when you're composing?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this track, this is the City Gates track. So this is probably one of the first levels that you come across in the game. And essentially it's a cityscape. So it's kind of, you're within the moon base, essentially. So I wanted to kind of have that sci-fi element. So I've got some synthesizers and some heavy bass stuff going along. And in terms of the sound design, within the game, like the purpose of the track, you can see here, the top part here says regular. So that's during the bass part of the game where you're just going along, the enemies are coming through. But when the boss comes in, you'll hear this intense section. So I'll trigger that sort of halfway through. So let me just open this up, and you can see everything that's going on, which is not much really. This is the regular section of the cityscape, City Gates. So you can see as it's playing. Yeah, so that's the essentially regular part, and then the melody kind of comes in just here. Very simple and kind of pulled back, which is the vibe we wanted when you're kind of just starting through the game, just getting through your first round of enemies. So what you heard just there was the kind of baseline music for the first level of the game, where the aliens first land, they're coming through and you're trying to fend them off and getting your towers and turrets happening. And when the Zelfa, big boss comes in, the sort of intense track plays. And initially, when I was chatting with Saxon, we just did, I just added this intense drum part, which you can hear here. You heard everything there, actually. So what I ended up doing was, just so we could test it in the game, was to copy this drum part down into the keyboard part. And as you can see, they look pretty much the same. And if we just listen to the keyboard part by itself, it is pretty intense. And if any pianist was playing that, they'd be like really hammering on the keys. So when the boss comes in, you hear that little bit of music introduced. Both pieces of music are being played at the same time, so that one or the other can be faded in or faded out, depending on what's happening within the game. So it's very dynamic and adaptive to whatever the player is up to. So it's really cool. And this kind of thing isn't necessarily a feature of Unreal Engine. It's something that I kind of picked up from using Fmod, which is a middleware program that we then implemented, made a similar system within Unreal Engine. So yeah, if you have an idea, you can pretty much ask the programmers and they'll come up with a solution a lot of the time. So yeah.
Can you break down one of your sound effects for the game?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably one of the cool ones. The Gatling gun. If I show you, essentially I use the snare drum of one of my sample libraries. So if I pull up the sample library, you can hopefully see actually that I've just used a heavy metal drum kit to create the sound effects of the Gatling gun firing. So if I pull that out, you should be able to... Actually, I won't need that exactly. I've bounced them down to audio, but you should be able to hear if I solo these. So you can hear that charge up, which is just a synthesizer that I've used to change the pitch, and then a lot of snare drum hits, which is really, really, really fun. When I created it, I was like, oh my God. So it's super satisfying sometimes to create sound effects when you're creating them all from scratch. So, yeah.
So for people that are looking at music and sound effects in games and they're like, oh, damn, I'd really love to get into that. What's one tip for people that would be interested in this that you'd give to them?
Yeah. I think whilst you're playing the games that you love, try and put yourself in the game designer or the sound designer or composer's chair and try and see what they're trying to achieve with the specific thing that you're doing in the game at that exact time. See if the music's really high velocity when you're in a battle scene or something, and see how the sound effect changes between when you draw your sword and put it back in. So it's those kind of subtle little things, and trying to notice how or why certain things happen within the game, and then maybe try and replicate it and figure it out, see how it works, see if you can make your own version of it or make a better version of it. And then after that would be learning how to use software, and networking, getting some of your stuff out there online, but also go out there in person and try and meet people. That's the best way to do it.